Simonian Farms and to Chinatown, Old Historic Japantown, and now we're back here. And part of our work with the Memory Project, we say, is awakening the archives of history and bringing to life monuments and the stories in our local history and everything around us. So it's so meaningful, I think, for all of us to be here at this site, to have this luncheon here. Because as many of you know, this is the site of the Fresno Assembly Center Memorial, which you can see if you look out that window there. And we encourage you to spend time with the memorial today. For those of you who don't know, it was a site of detention for 5,334 folks from the Japanese American community during World War II, 77 years ago, after Executive Order 9066 was in effect. So folks were incarcerated here for approximately 6 months before being sent to the camps further east. So quite, my voice is already getting trembly. Take a breath. I think it's quite a powerful thing to be gathering with our community here on this site. And I want to especially thank the Fresno Fair and the boards who are here today, and the CEO, John Alkiser, who for hosting us, and as Nikiko used the word, being a steward, really being a steward of our history and being a supporter of the Japanese American community for so long, and it just means an incredible amount to all of us here. I'm going to look at my notes now. Just if you hear that little bit of reverberation, probably not fine. So as I mentioned before, today it's hosted by the JACL and the PCDC, and the JACL is the largest and oldest Asian American civil rights organization here in the United States. It was founded in 1929. So we'll hear more about the JACL today, and more about the PCDC from members here as well.
Thank you.
And as you see on your program, we have quite a wonderful afternoon in store for all of us today. We have the founding executive director of Densho here, Tom Ikeda. Yay! Yes. He will be giving us a keynote presentation in a little bit. And Densho is such an important sort of organization in our community, really the foundation of so many stories. And Tom and I were talking earlier today, just the stories of our community are so important, and Densho has played such a huge role in holding and archiving those stories, educating the public about the incarceration experience. So to start us off, to start our program off, I'm going to hand it over to the Boy Scouts and Cub Scouts of PAC 199, who will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Boy Scouts and Cub Scouts. I'd like to invite Reverend Miyake-Stoner from the United Japanese Christian Church to lead our invocation today.
Good afternoon, my friends. I'm so honored to be here today with you all. So Reverend George Aki passed away this past July 4th at age 103. He was the last surviving chaplain to serve the 100th Battalion and the 442nd Regimental Combat Team. His first pastorate happened to be here in Fresno at the Fresno Congregational Church, and this is one of the mother churches of the church I serve today, United Japanese Christian Church. Reverend Aki continues to be a beloved and respected pastor even in his death. So in his memory, I want to share some of his words this afternoon by way of invocation. These words are from the dedication to Chester Tanaka's Go for Good. Reverend Aki writes, "We do not intend with this book to glorify war, to declare that might makes right, or simply to pay lip service to our honored dead. In these pages, we offer our unending thanks to those who gave their all and to the loved ones they left behind. We pay homage to those who made the numbers 100 and 442 meaningful and sacred with their lives. We are inspired once again by their battle cry for life, go for broke. And they achieved this in a time of utter uncertainty, frustration, and degradation. Through this chaos, each of them took the giant step forward and upward, giving new meaning to liberty, justice, and human rights. And in the course of their giving and serving, they died before they could see and taste the fruits of their sacrificial labors. They were mostly young men who had their future before them. They were ordinary youths wanting to live, but they became extraordinary as they dared to choose to come forward from the concentration camps to fight for the land that had incarcerated them and their families. And they became heroes because they dared to take that first step to become equals with others in American society. They stood apart and were not dismayed or dissuaded by forces that weighed against them. And we know that they sincerely desired to return home when their work was done. But they died not in their homeland in beds of comfort, but alone in agony in a strange land, ignorant of the legacy that their passing would create. Somewhere deep inside each of them, they must have known that it is better to fail in a cause that will ultimately succeed than to succeed in a cause that will ultimately fail. They attained the stature of giants as they fought and secured human rights, justice, and equality, not only for themselves and their families, but also for all who were oppressed. It is in memory and homage to these gallant officers and men of the 100th Infantry Battalion and the 442nd Regimental Combat Team that this book is dedicated." End quote. This afternoon, we give thanks for Reverend Aki, for his spirit of resilience, for his dedication to those he served, and for his legacy, and for all those who rose from the ashes of incarceration. Amen.
Next, I'd like to invite up Joy Goto, who is the new listener of the CCDC JACL. Joy's going to tell you a little bit more about our supporters today and the history as well. Joy?
Good afternoon, and welcome to the CCDC JACL Day of Remembrance commemorative event. First of all, I want to thank our sponsors. You'll see them on the back of our program. Sunmade Growers of California. I'll mention a little bit about each of our sponsors. Sunmade Growers of California was founded in 1912. It's a farmers cooperative of 750 grower families with vineyards in California's Central Valley. Sunmade is the largest distributor of raisins in the entire world. Our other co-sponsor is Fresh Pacific International, which is a diversified full-service sales, import, and export produce company serving global markets including Asia, Australia, and New Zealand. So let's thank our sponsors. In addition, I want to thank our partners in collaboration, especially the Yonsei Memory Project. Thank Rin Saito, who's our mistress of ceremonies today. And of course, Mikiko Matsumoto. So the Yonsei Memory Project is really to awaken intergenerational dialogue through the arts, storytelling, and memory mapping. And it's not only that, I have to mention that the seed of having our event here today came from a variety of people, including the Kiko and Bryn from YMP. One of the things that came up was, I know that our past governor, I want to thank her, Roberta Barton, Roberta, can you stand? She put me in touch as the incoming CCDC governor with Mikiko and Bryn, and we met in the fall to talk about what we could do. So last year, YMP had their first event here at the Fresno County Fairgrounds, right in front of the memorial. And we decided rather than having the event on 2 days, why not combine it all into one? And so that's what we had this morning with the bus trip with the YMP, and now here for the luncheon. And I hope we can continue that partnership because I think it's just a wonderful way to get us all together on this one event. So thank you. I also want to give thanks to our youth who are helping us today. Our National Youth Student Council representative from the CCDC, Kelly Aoki. Kelly, can you stand please? She, along with Jenna Aoki, Bryce Aoki, Garrett Sano, and Trey Sano, are our youth that are helping us today. Can you all stand please? Thank you. Going around and selling the 50-50 raffle ticket, so if you see them walking around, please support us. All right. As Bryn mentioned, it was 77 years ago on February 19th, 1942, that President Franklin Delano Roosevelt signed Executive Order 9066, leading to the forced removal and incarceration of 120,000 Americans of Japanese descent. Today marks the commemoration of this tragic event in our American history, one that we must remember and one that we must always hold close in order to respect, and most importantly, respect the civil rights of all humankind. It's also now 30 years ago that the Civil Liberties Act of 1988, also known as Redress, provided a national apology and reparations to the survivors of incarceration. It's fitting that we're here to remember those events, especially with the Assembly Center memorial right before us. We honor those that are survivors of the incarceration, and I'd like to ask those that are here that were part of the incarceration to please stand so that we can recognize you. As you know, the JCL is the nation's oldest and largest Asian Pacific American civil rights organization. It's a nonprofit, and it is totally membership driven. I encourage all of you to become a member, and if you're not already. It was founded in 1929, and it was established to essentially challenge racism and bigotry directed against Japanese Americans. Today, that mission and the work of the JCL expands to all of our community members. Standing up against discrimination and intolerance remains the focus of JCL today. We must remind ourselves of the constitutional dangers of unchecked executive orders that are issued falsely under the guise of national security. The JCL's mission is expanded towards achieving a society where the rights and protection of all individual groups are preserved. Much work still remains today, sadly. I'm hopeful that because we do have intergenerational support and support of our community members, that we will continue on. One thing I want to mention, just last month we had our inaugural Central Valley Miyake Summit, and it was organized and hosted by CCDC, including our National Youth and Student Council Representative Kelly Aoki, who spearheaded that event, the YMP, Yonsei Memory Project, President of Chinatown Foundation, led by Morgan Boizaki, the Central Valley Miyake Foundation. And I thank all of you for putting together that event. It brings a lot of hope to the future. So I thank all of you today for being here for this commemoration. It's truly an honor to have all of you here today, all in this one room, to really just share and to remember. And I really wish a heartfelt thank you to you all.
Round of applause going for Joy Hotel. I see some of you are taking to lunch. That's wonderful. Please, lunch will continue to be served as we're presenting a couple of more things. And let's Dale is besides being a JACL board member, he is currently the honorary consul of Japan in Fresno, which is amazing and wonderful. And of course, has been a leader in developing both the Pinedale Assembly Center Memorial and the memorial here at the Fresno Fairgrounds. So please join me in welcoming Dale.
Thank you very much, Brandon. It's my honor to introduce some of our dignitaries. All of you are dignitaries and VIPs, but we can't introduce everyone. But we do have some to give special recognition to. So at this time, I would like to invite Supervisor Sal Quintero and Joy to come up. Sal is on the Board of Supervisors for Fresno County, and his new wife, Hope, is here. So congratulations to both you and Hope.
Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you. It's truly a pleasure and an honor to be here today thank you for inviting my wife, Hope, and I to attend. It's really important to us to be a part of this Remembrance Day. I'd like to say a few words before I present a proclamation on behalf of the County of Fresno. And that is, I noticed that there's a solicitation of funds to restore Lily's Beauty Salon. How many of you are familiar with Lily? Well, my mom was a longtime customer, so we got to know Lily really well, so I just will be contributing to the restoration, believe me. Even after she moved over to First and Ashland, we still kept taking Mom to see Lily. So she was a longtime friend. The other part is you saw a lot of the beautiful silent auction items on there, and my good friend Moss asked me to please ask you to really try and outbid him, because I wrote his name down for a high price. He'd like you to, he said he doesn't need that much food. So, a couple things that I'd like to share with you, just as a lifelong Fresno resident, because of the meaning, the meaning of what today is all about, and some experiences that I had with the community, is that as an elected official and running for office, I knocked on a lot of doors, but I read a lot of Fresno history. So as I came upon the Japanese family that I knocked on their door, asked them a little bit if they were lifelong Fresno residents, and if they, they were here living in Fresno at the time of the incarceration, and just kind of a look in that person's eyes when they said, yes, I was here in Fresno. But the stories that they shared with me, and I want to share two of them just real briefly with you. One family told me that how important it was about building relationships, not just within your community, but reaching out and having friends and neighbors that were not Japanese. Because when the time came to leave, one story in particular this family told me, they said the Komodo family, remember Komodo's department store? They said the Komodo family, they got the letter and said you need to report. They didn't know what to do, as a lot of families didn't know. So they went to this one friend that was a regular shopper. The family shopped there, and they said, we don't know what's going to happen, but we know you well enough that we trust you, respect you, and honor your friendship. We don't know what to do, so we're going to give you our checkbook and our savings book. We trust you. And he said, okay. He said, okay. And they left. They didn't know what was going to happen. When they came back, that gentleman was waiting for him. He said, here's your checkbook, here's your savings book, here's the papers on your property, your house, and your business. And they were, of course, grateful. And that man ended up owning his own business, and some of you may know him, he's passed away now. He was a shell distributor, Coleman Johnson. And if you ever went to Komodo's department store and you worked for Coleman Johnson, you got the Coleman Johnson discount. It was just, you know, long-standing stories like that. The second story, and I'll finish quick, is a good friend of mine I grew up with is name of Dennis Simonian. Simonian's a food stand over here. He told a story of his family not knowing anything about farming, and I believe there was either 3 or 5 four Japanese families that taught them how to farm. So when they had to go to report, they gave them the checkbook, savings book, and the papers. They said, we're trusting the Simonian family to do the right thing. You're our friends. So they came back, and the same thing happened. Here's your checkbook, here's your savings book, here's your property, papers on your property. Forever grateful. A few years back, Dennis went back to the place where those families had been incarcerated, and went to look around, and he bought some of the lumber from the barracks. And he built a tower there at Jensen and Clovis. And I went to the dedication, and he told a story about this elderly gentleman that showed up. He says, I hear you built a tower here. He goes, yes. He said, well, I don't believe you that it came from the place where I was incarcerated at. And then he says, oh, he says, but I'm going to find out if it's true, so I want to see the lumber. I want to see the building. And then I said, okay. So the man went and looked at it, touched the lumber on that tower, looked at it, walked around, and he said, yeah, this is the real deal. And then he said, how do you know? He said, because where we were at, the winds were real heavy, and the wind put holes in the lumber. He said, we didn't have any insulation. He says, but look at all these holes. He says, I remember it. So it's stories like that are very important that we need to know about, and to share, to know that, you know, there's some times that aren't good in Fresno or in our country, but there's always that hope and respect that we have for each other, and it's just something that we need to believe. And today, I have a proclamation that I'd like to present to Joyce. And I'm not going to read it. It's going to take about 45 minutes. So I'll just read a part of it, and it reads as this. Fresno County was the site of 2 internment sites during World War II. The Pinedale Assembly Center, which housed over 4,800 Japanese Americans from May through July 1942, from Sacramento County, Amador County, and parts of Washington and Oregon. Additionally, the Fresno Assembly Center, located on the Fresno County Fairgrounds, which housed over 5,300 Japanese Americans living in the San Joaquin Valley from May through October 1942. The JACL, having successfully advocated for the passage of the Civil Liberties Act of 1988, that was passed in October. It included reparations for those living at the time. It is on this date that JACL community member Densho, the Japanese term to pass on the history to the next generation. With honor and pride, I, Fresno County Supervisor Sal Quintero, do hereby proclaim today, February 17, 2019, to be Japanese American Citizens League Densho Day of Remembrance in the County of Fresno. Congratulations. Thank you so much for allowing me the time and have a great week.
Yeah.
And please, don't forget to outbid Ross, okay?
Bryn's suggestion that you continue eating, and I think Pardini's knows that when the food's hot and ready to be served, please serve it. And continue enjoying your meal. It was a great honor for me to be appointed as Superior Court Judge in Fresno County. And after I retired, people asked me, what are you doing now? I'd say, well, I'm putting a lot back in, some other community projects. And then I was contacted by the consulate about a new opportunity, and it was my great honor to be appointed honorary consul of Japan in Fresno. We're fortunate today to have Consul General Riyama with his lovely wife present, and we have some greetings from the consul. Consul General.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Tomochika Uyama, and I'm the Consul General of Japan in San Francisco. It's about a year now since I came, February last year, and myself, this is my second time to be in Fresno. I'm very happy to be here. And today my wife Keiko is also here. Thank you very much for inviting me. I'm very much honored to join you for this year's Day of Remembrance event. But first of all, I'd like to express my sincere appreciation to the CCDG JACL for organizing this gathering, and more specifically to Joy Goto, and also Honorary Consul of Japan in Fresno, Dale Ikeda, for extending the kind invitation. And also would like to thank Supervisor Quintero for your great stories and recognition and your presence. Really well. Thank you very much. Our office feels very much privileged to be included in your activities. Japanese Americans have played a central role in the history of the state by enriching the community at large and contributing to the celebrated diversity of California. However, this particular occasion, the Day of Remembrance, is likely significant for the collective memory of Japanese Americans. February 19, 1942 is the day when the lives of Japanese Americans changed forever. The story of Japanese Americans has been permanently linked with this day and this tragedy. It is thanks to those individuals who suffered, struggled, and overcame those challenges that today people from Japan and other countries can enjoy a more complete life in California. I understand that today's venue is a historic site of the Fresno Assembly Center, where over 5,400 Japanese Americans from Central California were interned from May to October 1942. CCDC JACL has also created a memorial at the Fairgrounds, which consists of a plaza with storyboards, banners, and a wall of names listing those interned at the fair. I hope I'll be able to see it very soon. The Golden State continue to be home to the largest Japanese American population in the country, and therefore serves as perhaps the best location for all of us to share and preserve these valuable memories for the world. So thank you very much once again for being here today and for hosting us at this gathering. Please enjoy the rest of the day.
So that was my new boss. At this time, I would like to call up and recognize representatives from our site hosts, the Fresno County Fair, John Elkire, the CEO, Debbie Jacobson, the chair of the board, and member Letta Siabatu. I'm sorry. No. And I'll ask the chair, we'll have a presentation, and I believe John has a few comments, but John asked if JCL could help with a project to restore Lily's Beauty Salon sign. And we're just sort of starting our program, but we've already raised $3,500 towards our $5,000 goal. So Joy has a check to present in the letter.
Always. Well, to begin with, I can't thank you enough for selecting our site for your event today. We've been in a long-time partnership with Dale and his group. If you look out the north window there, I think that speaks for itself, that exhibit. And of course, you go downstairs, the tremendous exhibit that the Japanese Americans put together years ago when we opened the museum. It was right there when we cut the first ribbon. And then if you go over to the Fresno Fair Museum, we also have an internment area there too, because we don't ever want this to happen again. Ever. And they see the repetition, and always don't. We want to make sure it never happens again. And that resonates, especially with the school. I'm not here to give a speech. I'm just so happy and elated that you're here. Thank you for the donation. When will I receive your check? In honor of your mother. You know, these politicians don't get up to say anything. For those of you that are interested, look out this window straight across the Paul Hall Theater. You'll see a huge pole with 4 signs on it already. We have the original Fresno beer sign from 1907. It has light bulbs on it. Neon wasn't even invented at that time. If you look on the right, Evans Electric, the El Patio facility, and Paul's Cleaners in the Armenian tent. But on the top of that pole, the very top, will be lit. So that's where the sign will go. It's being restored right now. We're so excited that you've jumped in and helped us, and that's what makes the museum good. If we receive help from the community, the museum will continue to flourish and do very well when we have fresh and new exhibits. And that's my job, is to try to create that happen. Thank you all for your help and support.
This museum was John's brainchild, and it's part of his legacy. So hopefully someday this will be John Elkire, second section museum. Thank you, John. And we just left one flyer about Lily's Beauty Salon at each table. But if you're interested in supporting this project, there are other forms. Buy the books if you welcome to take books by Rosa Powell. And there's also a pile there on the bar. Now that I'm a consular officer instead of a bench officer, I can solicit funds. That's a neat benefit. Well, I'm not sure. I have to check with consular. He may tell me tonight what limits are. Let's see. Going on with the introductions, I'd like to introduce from Clovis's guest list, and Mayor O'Farrell, who's the superintendent for Flourishing Card Service. Thank you for being here. And, we also have Lori Bennett, president of Clovis Community College. She's my wife's successor out there, so I guess I should introduce my wife, Deborah. She's now moved up to a member of the Board of Trustees for the State Center Community College District. So now she's the boss of her former boss. That's nice. Also from the school side, we have newly elected Marcy Masamoto. She's a trustee of the Fresno County Board of Education. And not to be slighted that Dave Masamoto is here. Local author, contributor to the memorial, and past honoree for a Distinguished American Award for the Spirit of Education for all of his work. Please buy his books. We also have Reza McMinish. He's at the Yonsei Memory Project table. He was on the tour. He's the executive director of the Islamic Cultural Center of Fresno. And if I may add something, we have a nice relationship with ICCF. And if you go to our museum exhibit on the first floor, you'll see a couple things. One is a letter from JCL, National Director and National President. It was signed on September 11, 2001. September 12, the day after the September 11 attack, in which JCL was the first civil rights organization to come out in support of our Muslim and Arab American brothers and sisters. You'll also see a nice plaque there displayed. JCL received ICCS, Spirit of Abraham. Thank you, Reza. Please thank ICCS for it. I think I'm almost done. Hope you're enjoying your meal. Enjoying mine shortly. But Congressman Jim Costa wanted to be here, but you know, things have been kind of busy in Washington. Thankfully, we have a budget. So he sent a letter and a certificate of special recognition. So, Joy, if you would come up to receive the certificate and overstaying my welcome, but I will read this letter. Dear JCL, I am pleased to offer my support and recognition of the Central California District Council of the Japanese American Citizens Day for this year's 30th anniversary Remembrance banquet. Your continued efforts to promote the heritage and cultural values of the Japanese American community helps ensure the preservation of its rich legacy. For your stalwart support of such a crucial mission, you have my deepest appreciation. The JCL has and continues to provide education across the San Joaquin Valley about Japanese American history. Throughout my tenure as a representative of the San Joaquin Valley, both in the California Legislature and the U.S. Congress, I have fought to identify and resolve many issues that people of diverse cultural and ethnic backgrounds face every day. As you gather to observe the 77th anniversary of Executive Order 9066, it is important to acknowledge how far we have come in achieving the goal of equality and fairness in the United States, and how far we have yet to travel before that goal is fully realized. Please accept my best wishes for a successful event. This yearly tradition is one which makes our valley a brighter place to live. And it is my hope that the CCEC JCL continues to grow and thrive in the coming years. Sincerely, Jim Frost. I think I'm done.
Want some more?
The program indicates that this is when we present the Distinguished American Award. We're combining that with the introduction of our keynote speaker. And the Distinguished American Award is CCAC's highest honor. If you look at the program, you'll see the many distinguished members of our community and national leaders who have received this award. And we're proud to add Tom Kida and his nonprofit Den Show to our list of honorees. So let me say a few things about Tom, and then after his presentation, Joy and I will present some items to Tom. Tom graduated from the University of Washington with a BS in Chemical Engineering and a BA in Chemistry, and also received his MBA, his business degree there as well. He grew up in Seattle. Prior to working at Densho, Tom was a general manager at Microsoft Corporation in the multimedia publishing group. So I'm speculating that's where he made his millions and then retired early to start his nonprofit. Tom also worked as a research engineer developing artificial kidneys for Cordis Dow Corporation and as a financial analyst at the Weyerhaeuser Company. Tom is the founding executive director of Densho, a nonprofit organization he helped start in 1996. Densho's mission is to inspire action for equity by keeping alive the personal stories of Japanese Americans forcibly removed from their homes and unjustly incarcerated during World War II. He is a Sansei, third generation Japanese American, who was born and raised in Seattle. Tom's parents and grandparents were incarcerated during World War II in Minidoka, Idaho. Tom has conducted over 250 video oral history interviews with Japanese Americans to examine the personal impact of racial discrimination during a time of fear. He has also created online curriculum explaining racial discrimination and has spoken against Muslim travel bans and family detention centers on the southern border. But before I introduce Tom and have him come up, I did forget to introduce one of our dignitaries, one of Debbie and my guests, which is inexcusable. But when Flo Dunstan and Florence Dunn, Flo is the president of the California Health Science University, which established a pharmacy school and is now in the process of establishing a medical school in Fresno County. Doing great work. Thank you, Flo, and her husband Gary for being here. So at this time, it's my honor to introduce Tommy Keda. I've been asked many times whether we're related. I'm not aware of any relationship, but I'm claiming him as a cousin anyway. Cousin Tom, the podium is yours.
Thank you so much, Dale. And thank you all in Fresno for being so welcoming. This is my second day here. And just the generosity that I've experienced in terms of the stories people have shared, and people have shared the materials for me to look at. And so just thank you so much. In fact, when I landed yesterday, it was raining. For satellite, you guys even had rain for me but just just a little secret. Seattleites, when we leave Seattle, we come to California, we really want sunshine. So we didn't. So I didn't quite get what I was looking for. But today what I'm going to do is, hopefully it'll be entertaining. I want to just sort of talk about story and how important the Japanese-American story is. And I'm going to start with just a quick story about how Densho got started. Because what I realized, Densho got started right after an event like this. It was 23 years ago in Seattle. Kind of a dinner banquet. After the banquet, several members of the Japanese-American community, we got together, and back then, maybe 2/3 of the audience were Nisei, our elders. And when we looked around and said, you know what? People are starting to disappear. We're starting to lose some of the key leaders in the Japanese-American community and their stories. And we have to do something. And so we started talking, and the thing that really galvanized was more than just collecting stories. The question that we asked ourselves is, what would happen if Japanese Americans shared their story? Not just in the community, but with everyone. What would happen? That's when the conversation got really exciting. We started talking about now, if we did that, then what happened to Japanese Americans would happen again. That we could help, we could connect with other communities. And so that was sort of the mantra that we first started. And so the mission of Densho was simply to preserve and share the history of Japanese American World War II incarceration and to promote equity and justice today. And if you look at that vision statement, when I went around to other parts of the country, places like Fresno were probably doing a similar thing, Los Angeles, San Francisco. So what made Densho different? And it gets to some of the introduction. Densho roots were in Seattle, and this was done 23 years ago, so the mid-1990s, where digital technology was just emerging. I had recently left Microsoft. We also had the World Wide Web starting to emerge. And if you remember back then, there was a thing called the dot-coms. And so in Seattle, the origins of Amazon was happening, things like Expedia. And these were all kind of peers of mine, when I worked at Microsoft. And so I kind of knew what was going on. And so what we thought about in terms of storytelling, it wasn't going to be about making money, but how can we use the same thinking, the same technology to really collect, preserve, and share the story. And so that was the genesis of Densho. So we weren't going to do a museum, although things like this are amazing. We were going to be different. We weren't going to have books or films. What we were going to do is we were going to collect these stories and just make them available for free on the internet. And so here today is a picture of our homepage. And our mission still is pretty much the same. We're a grassroots organization dedicated to the story to promote justice and equity today. But it's all online. In fact, oftentimes people around the country come to Seattle and they come to Densho and they want to visit us. And I think they're expecting something like this room where there'll be all these displays and maybe multimedia technology. But what they find is really about now 20 of us in kind of in a large office in front of computer monitors working in terms of developing software, digitizing content. So it's very much a very different organization. So what have we done in 23 years? So we've been going around the country collecting Japanese American stories. It was about 10 years ago, I was in Fresno. We did, I think, about 8 stories, 6 to 8 stories here. We've done, like Manzanar, who's a partner of ours, Manzanar National Historic Site. They've done about 150 that we digitized and put in. And so this is the foundation of the Densho website. we call our digital repository, where we have close to 1,000 in-depth video recorded oral histories. The people like Saab Masada and Marian Masada, their story is and after we started collecting the stories, what we also found out was, these are amazing photographs. I mean, Brad, we're made some of Brad's things. Even, films, the Sakaya, we have some of that in there. So we have over 100,000 also photographs, historic photographs, documents, newspapers, all there, and they're all free use. And so that was the thinking of Genjo. Let's collect these things, let's preserve them in a way, let's use computer technology, the same technology that Amazon would use in terms of organizing things so we can find things really quickly. And then what we found was, okay, it's great that you have all these materials, but for historians, when you look at like a historic photograph or you hear a story, what's the context? What do we know about this place, this event, and things like that? So we also created a very in-depth online encyclopedia. 10 years ago, we started with 300 core articles, including things like all the assembly centers, all the camps, key individuals, key dates. Now it's about 1,500 articles. Very detailed. So again, we learned a lot from Wikipedia. In fact, we used a lot of Wikipedia technology to create this. So that was helpful. We also created a resource guide. So another thing that we find is, if someone wants to do, say, a book about the 442nd, the military, and what we found constantly were people who discovered that story and they want to write a book about it. There are literally probably about 50 books about the 442nd. And we're not telling people don't write the book, but you should probably understand what's there. So we created a resource guide also that, and what I did was I did a search on Fresno just to see what was interesting. It came up with 14 different resources. One that would make sense, diamonds in the rough. When I think of Fresno as a community, you have Kiriyo Nakagawa, who is probably the most knowledgeable person about Japanese American baseball during World War II. And so there are books about this, and Fresno is prominently displayed. So what I did for this presentation, we have this large database of all these stories and images. I just did a search on Fresno and got over 150 stories and objects that were tagged with Fresno. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you one. So I asked permission, but we have some. Gail and I were talking last night about how, and you probably don't realize this community, but Saab and Marian are really national treasures. When I think about their knowledge of the story, their ability to articulate what they lived through, and their willingness to share so broadly is extraordinary. And I, again, visit lots of communities, and the two of them truly are national treasures. And if any of you have not heard their lecture, Saab sent me at I think 2:30 last night, 2:30 a.m. He sent me the notes from his talk and his PowerPoint. It's incredible. It's as good as any college lecture in terms of the history. And they also weave in his personal story and Marian's personal story. And so it's a very fabulous. And so if you haven't ever done that, you should. But what I'm going to do tonight, or today, I'm not going to really go into the hardships. But when we do interviews, and these are in-depth, generally 3 to 4 hours, we also talk about the everyday living conditions of what's going on. And so in this one, Saab is going to talk about, actually a story that we hear quite a bit. A lot of times it's about what were the living conditions like. And so here he talks about the latrine. And so here's
do remember certain things that stands out in all of us, and as soon as we mention it, everybody laughs and they can remember, and it's the community toilets. They were just holes on a plank, I forgot, maybe 5 or 6, and over here was a big tank that filled with water, and when it got so full, it would just tip the tank, and the water would rush down, and if whoever sat on the last hole there, the water would splash up. But sometimes, I guess they didn't think that it was going to unload when they were there, but they did. They made sure they got up. In fact, all of us sitting, when that tank emptied out, we would stand up because the water's gushing down. Well, I remember early on, within maybe a couple or 3 weeks, they had a talent show going on, trying to make life as normal as possible. And they had about 6 chairs on the stage, and they pantomimed these guys sitting there, jumping up and sitting down, jumping up and sitting down. We all knew what they were back.
So those are the stories when I go to classrooms that they really remember. So I always, when I go to classrooms, they always send me thank you notes. But when I show some of the everyday things like this, I mean, those are the ones that they say, oh, and I remember the story about, someone went to the bathroom. But it wasn't always easy. And in particular, this area has a really strong connection to Seattle that many of you may not know. We have the Fresno Assembly Center that was here, where most of the locals, Japanese Americans, went to. The Pinedale one, actually the majority of the people, the Japanese Americans who were incarcerated at Pinedale, came from Washington and Oregon. And in particular, many people, or all the people right outside the Seattle limits, went to Pinedale en route to the lake. And for Seattleites, coming down to the Fresno area in the summer, it was a huge shock in terms of the climate. And so here we have Mitzi Hashiguchi. And Mitzi's reputation when she was alive in Seattle, she was one tough bird. She was like one of the, we thought about someone who really has a lot of grit. It was Mitzi. And because she grew up in a Bellevue farm, and she would tell me stories about what it was like growing up on a farm as a kid, and all the chores, going to the berry farm, and working from sunrise to sunset, and even later to do all her chores. And here she talks about what it was like. The question being was, what was Pinedale like?
In Pinedale, it was terrible. It thrown together camp is what it was, and there was all tar paper on the outside, and with a little thin window you hardly see the outside. The floor was all tar, and it was so hot that when the army cops were put there, it sunk about 3 inches on the ground right into it, and then the mats, we had to go out and get straws and fill it with straw, and then put it on our bed, and when you lay on it, the straw sticking to your back body because it's straw, But my son got sick all the time because of the hot weather. He couldn't handle it. He wouldn't eat or he wouldn't anything. So he was all skin and bone by the time we really moved on.
And so here's a piece of trivia too about Pinedale. So there, in the staff we had this theory. I mean, what we found out in the records was there was actually another assembly center that was being built that was never used. It was actually in Washington State. It was eastern Washington in the Toppenish area. And the theory we have was apparently the construction of it was so poor, the government finally decided not to open it. And the theory that we had was all the people from the Northwest that went to Pinedale, they really were supposed to go to this other assembly center in Washington at Toppenish, but because that never opened, they hastily created Pinedale, which was sort of substandard in many ways, and that's what happened. So there was kind of more of a hurry assembly center. The other use of the materials. You know, we go like at a micro level, you look at one community, use searches. The other thing you can do is you can more broadly talk about these larger things. And things like what Saab and Marion do when they go to classrooms. You know, I do the same thing. I go to a lot of classrooms, and I share Japanese American history. And like Saab and Marion, I bring in my family history. And the reason I do this, and it's something I started with at classroom presentations, was, you know, I use this term, and some people attribute this to Mark Twain, but this quote that history doesn't repeat itself, but it often rhymes. And that's just to get students to think about, you know, what happened to Japanese Americans and how is that similar to what's going on today. You know, I mentioned earlier how we have 100,000 photographs and documents. You know, so my family put in, my mom's family put in images from the photo album. So this is an image of my grandparents on my mom's side, Kinoshi side. So that's you know, Ji-chan and Ba-chan when they first came. You know, the interesting story in terms of how things rhyme. My grandfather came to Seattle in 1908, which was just the same time that the Gentleman's Agreement was being enacted. So that was an agreement that banned Japanese immigration of workers, Japanese workers. And so if my grandfather had tried to come to the United States just a few months later, he would have been stopped and would not been come. And then he later on went back to Japan and married my grandmother and brought her over right before 1924, which was the Immigration Act of 1924 that banned all Japanese immigration. So in terms of immigration bans, you know, my family was very much affected by that in terms of what could happen. And also, I won't go into the history lesson, but there were all these anti-Japanese laws, alien land laws, and other policies. But in spite of that, this is a picture of my mom's family in the late 1930s. And my mom's the third from the left. And as you can see, it's a thriving family in Seattle. My grandfather in Seattle had, actually for a Japanese immigrant, was seen as a pretty prestigious job. He was the head bell captain at the Rainier Club in downtown Seattle. So the Rainier Club, you know, to this day is one of the most exclusive private clubs in Seattle. And before the war, the bellmen were all Japanese Americans or Japanese immigrants. During the war, it switched to African Americans, and to this day, and then post-war, it's African Americans. There's that switch, similar to what happened to train porters in many cities, where it used to be Japanese before, and then during the war, it switched to African American. But as a Japanese immigrant, he was able to get all these jobs for other Japanese immigrants, and so he was prominent. You know, they bought a house, and they were doing quite well. And then the war started. I just grabbed this picture because to give you a sense of the climate change or the climate differences. So this is what an assembly center in Washington looks like more. It's more, you know, the complaints we got there wasn't about the heat. It was about the mud, the rain, you know, how miserable it was trying to get around. So that was a more typical scene from my family's experience. And then let me talk a little bit about my uncle. So he was in that earlier picture. He was the young man off to the right. He was my mother's oldest brother. You know, he was at the University of Washington when the war started. He was in the ROTC program. And as soon as he was able to volunteer, when he went from Puyallup and then to Mendocino, he volunteered. The family story that we all heard that was really difficult was he actually failed the physical because he had some kidney ailment. And so the Army refused and says, no, you're not qualified. But he was so disappointed, my grandmother gave him a herbal remedy, right? Some kind of herbs. And so for 2 or 3 weeks he took this, and then when he retook the physical, he passed. His kidneys were good, so his kidneys strengthened. So he was able to join the Army and served in the 100th Battalion of the 442nd. Yes, for this group, I don't have to say much about the 442nd. But what I wanted to do is show a clip. Rudy Toki was a Salinas boy who went on and served in the 442nd, a great storyteller. But during the interview, he told me the story of the aftermath of the rescue of the Lost Battalion. And so there was this 1 month in 1944 when the 442nd was in France. And during that month in October, they had just liberated 2 French towns, Brières and Villefontaine, took really heavy casualties, heavy fighting. And they were scheduled to then go rest. But there was a Texan unit, the 141st, that was sort of trapped in the hills. They had been ordered to advance too far, so the German army had completely surrounded them. For a week, other units tried to save them, no one could get through. So they ordered the 442nd to go rescue them. And when I interviewed many of the vets, they knew that was a defining moment for them. Even as depleted as they were, they knew that this was a chance for them to really show the people what they were made of. And so the unit, after close to 5 days of heavy fighting, they finally broke through and rescued this Texan unit when no one else could. But they took incredibly heavy casualties, up to 800 casualties, to save about 260 men. So it was dramatic. But the story that really got to me was Rudy said after this had all happened, a couple weeks later, the general in command wanted to do what's called a retreat parade. He wanted the unit to march in front of him so he could acknowledge them, because they had just sort of liberated 2 French towns, saved the Texan unit, so he wanted the whole unit to go by him and salute them. And so the 442nd, at full strength, there were about 4,000 men, so 3 infantry battalions at headquarters. And that day, there were less than 800 men left standing because of because of the casualties, the wounded, killed in action, the illnesses, people in hospital. And so you have about 800 people who are marching. The general goes up there. He's expecting several thousand men to march in front of him. And so he actually gets angry. This is really telling the story.
The 36th Division commander wanted the 442nd to pass in review. And he said, all personnel of the 442nd will pass in review. So the 442nd passes in review, and like I said, you've got 3 battalions plus headquarters, and they don't even have a battalion out there passing in review. So General Dahlquist turned around and he said to the colonel, when I order everyone to pass in review, I mean the cooks and everybody will pass in review. And Chaplain Yamada said, this is the first time I saw the colonel cry. And he said, this is all I have left. Can you imagine the feeling he must have had to think that he had to order people to go out and get killed when it was these people that put the families into concentration camp and they're still there.
When I did this interview with Rudy, right after this moment, it was a powerful moment. Actually, I broke down and I cried. When Rudy told me the story, and part of this, what I realized was, it's a really powerful story, and it really gets to the heart of what these men went through. But the thing that hit me personally in terms of this story was, here's a picture of a memorial service sort of on the battlefield for the men who were killed. At the same time, in camps, you had similar memorial services going on for the men who were killed. So this is a memorial service in Mendoza, for my uncle who was killed in action. And the interesting thing to me was, I interviewed Rudy very early, and that story always was really powerful to me. This photo and the next photo, I didn't see until years later. And here's my grandparents accepting the flag. And what I realized was, this hidden trauma almost that I had about my family and my uncle who was killed in action, that was never really told to me in terms of what happened. And not even seeing these photographs until much later. But what really brought everything together was knowing more about my family's history, seeing these photographs, putting it all together, and then sharing it with people too. It's sort of, I talked to Mary about this, for me and my pain, to share these difficult things, it sort of, lightens the load, because if you saw me trying to do this 10 years ago, I would just be in tears. I could not actually tell the story. But now it's something that I think is powerful for people to understand that some of the things that in particular that East Lace had to go through, to lose not only all your belongings, your job, to be incarcerated, but to lose your eldest son was such a difficult thing. As I shared these stories, now we get back to kind of the power of story. I shared this story at an event, and there was an author there, Daniel James Brown, one of my favorite authors. He wrote the book, The Boys in the Boat, which in the Seattle area is kind of really well known. It's about the University of Washington crew team that won the 1932 gold medal at the Berlin Olympics. When Hitler was there, but these sort of farm boys who kind of took over a sport that was very much Ivy League, and it's just he's a great storyteller. It's all real history, and he really does like 3 or 4 years of research, and he writes and crafts it. And after he learned more about the Japanese American story, and in particular the 442, his next project is going to be on a company in the 442, and starting from places probably like Fresno, Hawaii, Seattle, the Midwest, and how these men grew up, and then how they all came together to train at Camp Shelby, to go to Europe, to fight together, and to rescue that lost battalion, and to tell that story. He's already signed a very large book deal with Viking Penguin. We were talking to the CEO of Warner Brothers, and he's a champion of this because he happens to be Japanese American, and his uncle was in the 442. This is Kevin Tsujihara, and so Kevin is committed to making a major Hollywood film about this. And so what you're doing from these stories that we just collected over the years, last 20 years, are now grouping out. That these aren't things that Ben shows you. All we're doing is we're collecting the stories and making them available. But now you have artists like an author writing a book that he said wouldn't be possible unless he had all these oral history transcripts, because all these people, everyone that he's writing about are now dead. And it's not just through this. Earlier or last year, there was a big podcast that the Smithsonian did, Executive Order 9066. I talked to the producer, he said over 1 million people listened to that. That was again based on the oral histories from the Den show. There were many books coming out, and on and on. And that again is this model. When I think about what the impact of the story, and it's not us trying to explain the history, it's just collecting these simple stories like Saab and Marion, just their personal stories, how they want to tell it, and just preserving it and sharing it and making it really available. So I'm going to show one more clip because I want to talk about stories and impact on the Japanese American community. Last year we celebrated or commemorated the 30th anniversary of Regis, the passage, and the JCL played this incredible, huge role. And as part of their partners, some of the vets kind of helped in. And I talked to a lot of the vets in terms of why they helped in. And many of them said because of what happened to their friends on the battlefield. They knew the story about the community that happened, that getting an apology was really, really important to them. So here Rudy's going to tell a story. It's in two parts, where this is in the throes of redress, when it wasn't clear if Congress was going to pass it. And so they had to get enough votes from members of the House. And so Rudy talks about him and two other JCLers, going to a Texan congressman, very prominent congressman, who was against redress. And so they go to the office, have a meeting, and the second part is how the congressman votes on the floor of the House. So here's the story. And just as a preview, Rudy uses some colorful language. Because obviously powerful.
And he come in there, we're sitting there, and he comes in and he says, "What the hell are you son of a bitches doing in my office?" So we said, "Sir, we had a 9 o'clock appointment with you to talk about the redress." And his answer to that was, "My goddamn government doesn't have to apologize to any son of a bitch. You understand what I'm saying?" So we said, "Yes." He said, "Then what the hell are you still sitting here for? I want you guys to just get the hell out of my office." So two of them went up and they started to walk out. And I stayed there, and he turned around and looked at me and he said, "What the hell are you still doing here?" I turned around and I said to him, "Sir, I just want to thank you." And he said, "Thank me for what? I'm not going to do a goddamn thing for you guys." I said, "No, sir." I says, "I wanted to thank you because you became a congressman right after the war ended. And you're still a congressman, and I have to know that you have a wound just like mine, so when you wake up the damn mornings, you hurt like a son of a bitch." And I said, "Sir, even with that, you take all this pain and everything to help run our government." So I said, "I'd like to certainly thank you. You're a damn good man." And as I looked at him, I could see his eyes got a little watery, and I thought to myself, I think I've got this son of a bitch. Sir, I says, "I'd like to say thank you, and I'll shake your hands." And I shook his hand, and I walked out. And they announced for him to go up to the podium, and that he has 3 minutes to talk against the redress bill. So he got up, and I was watching him as he walked down the aisle between the seats. I saw him, he looked up, and he stopped once, and he stood there for a while, and all of a sudden he walked to the end of the row, went down the stairs, and instead of taking a step up to the podium, he went right out the door. And I was confused. I was sitting up there, what the hell is he doing? He was supposed to talk for 3 minutes against the redress, and I couldn't understand it until I looked at, in the house there, they have all the congressman's name, and at the end of each row, there's a blue button, there's a red button. Red button, you're against, blue button, you're for. I see, looked at his name, and he's voted for the redress bill.
Yeah, so that's a photo of Reagan doing that. But yeah, we all know about the redress. We commemorated last year, the 30th anniversary. But again, it's these stories that, for me, really bring it alive. And more than just, kind of who gets credit for it. It's what I learned in terms of the values that the community has. There are studies that show that the people who respond, who have the most grit when things get really hard, are those who know the story of their family and their community. So let me say that again. So the people who have the most grit know about their family and their community, especially when that family or community has gone through a very difficult time. Because the thinking is, and this was all empirical information, they did this study, they looked at two, and that was the one factor that they could see. The ones who knew their family story had more grit. And the thinking that these researchers had was, well, it's because they know that within them, their family has suffered and struggled and persevered through more difficult times, and that they can do it too. And so these stories are just so important, and not just to argue about the history, but I think in many ways what I've learned, it's more about the values. So when I think about Densho now, we talked about earlier that very first meeting. We said, well, what would happen if Japanese Americans shared their story? We said, well, we would, it would never happen again. And sure, when I think back now, sure, we got history from the Japanese American perspective. We can prevent similar events from happening. We made these connections with other communities through our personal stories. The thing that is really emerging now is how others can reshare the story to reach bigger audiences. I mean, when I think of the Yonsei Memory Project, I mean, my belief, my hope is that we can work with organizations that there's such rich raw materials for them to create new things, new products that will go on forward, and not just the Yonseis, but the Gosei, Rokusei, on and on. 100 years from now, we'll be seeing this based on these powerful stories. But the thing that I've really come to appreciate is the healing aspects of the story. That by sharing these stories, there have been so many Niseis that I've interviewed that have broken down and cried during the interviews. And many times the ones who do this, it's because they're doing it for the first time. And after the interview, I will often get a phone call or email from a son or daughter or even a grandchild. And they'll say, what happened during that interview? Because grandma is now different. All of a sudden, she's sharing stories. She's talking about things. She's so much lighter because something happened. And I think it is this very powerful effect of sharing your story. And so here's my challenge as the final note to everyone here. I know in the community we talk a lot about you have to remember the story. And I think that's the beginning. I think remembering the story is really important, and you can go to Densho and look at things and learn and remember. But more than remembering, share the story. With your family, with friends, with even people you don't know. Share the stories. Like the supervisor does. I mean, he's a great storyteller. When he tells a story, it connects us, and we all have that same opportunity. The stories are there, whether it's from the community or from your family. I just really encourage you to share. And I do this from a place of experience and watching how much it's changed my life and the lives around me. And so that's something that I give to you as a gift. So thank you so much for that.
One last thing, if anyone has a question or email they can't get to me, my email's right there, tom.ed@densho.org. I'm sorry?
So Tom, please, we have some plaques to memorialize our award to you and Densho. And CCDC also has a donation to Densho in the amount of $1,000.
No, I always think.
Rin, I'll just go ahead and go into the swearing in of officers. But before I do that, I do want to recognize Carrie Saber, who's here from the fair as well. Carrie, thank you for helping us. I'm going to do this a little different. I will have the CCDC and chapter officers stand. I will read the oath. And I'll say something about do you accept these obligations or whatever, and you'll say I do, and yeah. So please stand if you are a CCDC or chapter officer. Please raise your right hand. Aware of the responsibilities to which I have been elected and conscious of the important role which the Japanese American citizens must play in the life of our community and our nation, I solemnly swear before my fellow citizens that I will discharge the duties of my office conscientiously and to the best of my ability. I will continually seek to further the purpose of the Japanese American Citizens League and to serve my fellow citizens to the end we may be worthy of the privilege of citizenship in this our country, the United States of America. Do you so swear? Thank you. You're installed.
Thank you. Tom, that was just incredible. Your presentation was just so inspiring, and we should totally work together. I'm so excited about the connection. And it just strikes me that not only is it this archival project and a justice project, but it's the healing that you mentioned. I think not even, healing for those who are telling the story, but so healing for us who are listening and bearing witness, as Yonsei, and I know Kiko and I have really, it's transformed our whole world to hear these stories and to be in them, to come together and continue to tell these stories. It's been transformative and quite healing for us as a family and on an individual level. So I'm so inspired by your work, and thank you so much for being here today. Can you use one more round of applause? Speaking of youth and healing and young people, I'm going to invite Kelly up. And Kelly is the CCDC's National Youth Student Council rep. And Kelly will be, hi Kelly, is going to be conducting the raffle. Maybe actually Kelly will be back here, yeah? So we can maybe direct our attention to the back here.
What are they rattling?
I don't know. I guess we're supposed to buy that ticket.
I didn't know either. Me neither. So, I passed. No. I didn't know. I thought they were going to come out.
6, 0, 4, 5, 8, 4.
Nobody.
6, 0, 4, 5, 8, 4.
Silence. Oh, here. They just jumped them out of the air.
Check that out. Oh, grandfather. It's a grandfather.
That's the thing. So that was cute. Yeah. Did you see the clouds?
I did want to mention, over here on the side, right in back of Travis Nishi, there's a board up there with pictures. Those are pictures from our summit that we had several weeks ago. And so I welcome all of you to, before you leave this afternoon, to stop by and take a look at all those photographs. They were of the participants bringing objects that meant something to them as a member of the community, especially the Japanese American community, and we all shared what that meant. And there was a word shared, and it was led by the Yonsei Memory Project, and it was just a beautiful event. So I wanted everybody to see those photographs that Kelly Aoki, our CCDC youth rep, had taken throughout that day.
So we will be beginning to close our event today. So I'd like to invite Reverend Kiko Miyake-Stoner up again. And I believe you also have an announcement too, besides the benediction. Thank you.
Yes, UJCC is so honored to be a partner with the Fresno JCL for an upcoming event. We will be welcoming Marsha and Aiden Izumi here to Fresno Sunday, March 31st at 1 p.m. to share their story. You might know Marsha from her column in the Pacific Citizen, the JCL Pacific Citizen. Marsha and Aiden are a mother and transgender son who have spoken throughout the country to over 200 organizations about their journey from fear, shame, and sadness to unconditional love and acceptance. So we hope that you can all join us on March 31st at UJCC at 1 p.m. There's a Facebook event that if you go to United Japanese Christian Church, and also you can find information on our church website, ujcclife.com. We're also, they wrote a memoir together, so we're going to be doing conversation around their books beginning this Thursday, 6:30 to 8, and then the following 3 Thursdays around their story and their memoir. So please, if you'd like a book, we've got a few other copies, and we just welcome all of you to join in this important series. So thank you. So by way of benediction, I wanted to share some more words from Reverend George Aki. He writes, "We had better work for peace, peace for our children and peace for their children. We've got to continue to work and work hard. When I see some of these 800 crosses at the gravesite, that's a lot of people. I visited these U.S. cemeteries in Italy, and when I just saw rows and rows of graves for the white, black, and Nisei soldiers, I wondered what they died for. We're so good at glorifying the war dead that we fail to look ahead to the future. This is what I think those men died for, that the future will be bright, and somehow we will continue to work for peace. This must be our goal. We've got to pledge before our time comes to do something about it. This is what I am fighting for right now, to bring some sort of joy and peace for our generations to come. To make it personal, I say for our children, our grandchildren, and their children, we've got to build a world where they can live normal lives and help each other and bring love and peace. In the spirit of Reverend Aki, let us go forth and be peacemakers in our own hearts, in our communities, and in the world. Go in the peace of Christ. Amen.
Thank you, everybody, for being here today. I've said this before to some of you, but I feel like every time I come together with my community and we gather and we share stories, I feel the elders and the ancestors on the other side sort of applauding us and just feeling very happy that we're together, and spending time to remember them and remember their stories, and meet new people and invite others into that story as well. So it's just, again, a very special moment. So a couple quick announcements. I wanted to note that the centerpieces were donated by Hikuforo, and they are for yours to take. So somebody at your table, or if you want to pass them along to somebody else, those are being donated for us to take home today. Round of applause for Hikuforo. Reminder to check on the silent auction status if you bid on anything back table over there. And just another thanks to our supporters and our sponsors today, Sunmade Growers, Fresh Pacific International. Maybe a round of applause for Cardinis and for all the folks who keep that round of applause going again for thank you so much to CEO John Alkire and the board. We're so happy you could join us today. And one final thanks to Tom Ikeda. Thank you, Tom. So with that, thank you so much, everybody. That closes our programming. Have a wonderful afternoon. Thank you.